Hey, everybody, welcome to the Bold Creatives Collective podcast. I'm so excited for this conversation. We have with us Raquel Serebrenik from 4Art Partners. And their story, 4Art Partners, started with the idea to support artists and creatives and their legacies. That's something that is really important and dear to my heart, too. How can we as creative leaders really instill on the world our mark and our impact so that it lasts longer than we are and longer than even the work that we put out into the world? And I'm really excited to talk with Raquel about her work with artists and creatives. She has a really interesting model, business model, organizational model that she developed with a couple other partners to really help artists establish their brand and make something of themselves and for themselves. So Raquel, welcome to Bold Creatives Collective. I'm so glad that you're here. Can you just give us a little bit of an idea of who you are? And then we'll have a little bit of a conversation.
Absolutely. And it's such an honor to be here with you, TJ. I'm so passionate about these topics. And I mean, you yourself are a wonderful leader and work with artists and creatives all the time. So it's amazing to have the opportunity to share and exchange ideas and see how we can better, our practices, but also see if we can support and help other people out there, grow their businesses too.
For
So
sure.
by way of background, I'm originally from Colombia. I'm an art historian and cultural developer. So that's my training. And when I graduated, and even before I graduated from my bachelor's degree, I had already started working with a few artist foundations. And by that, I mean artists who had either passed or were in the later stages of their careers and had built organizations, usually nonprofit organizations, whose mission was to conserve and protect the legacy that they had built, in addition of supporting other charities and other missions in their lives as well. So through my work in that specific niche, I started understanding how important it was to develop these organizations, support them and help them grow financially, because if they were successful, they were making so many people around them successful as well, too. And then on the flip side, I was noticing that there were artists or creatives who did not plan their legacy, who, for reasons that, not good or bad, but I could see, the effect on their families, the people that worked with them, for that lack of planning as well. So through my education in art school, I also started noticing how some artists, a very young entrepreneurial mindset, had difficulties in building their art practice as a business and not just the creative side, which they were very wonderful at. So fast forward to, a few years ago, I got together with 3 other amazing women in different areas that complement each other. And that's when we started 4Art Partners, each of us with very different skill sets that support each other. And we kind of like come together and strategize on how different artists and legacies as well can continue to grow throughout the years. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot. And, between all that, so many other things, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Right. No, that's really helpful for us to get an idea of where you're coming from, your background, and what you have observed throughout your time as, an art student, art historian, working with artists, and seeing where there might be gaps in their practices or in their even just perspectives of themselves and what they have to offer, and walking alongside of them to help them realize that if they slowed down a little bit and considered some other things other than just the stuff that they make, their impact on the world around them will be or could be so much greater. And then also, it sounds like you believe and have seen that if they pay attention to these things, their livelihood, their lifestyle can be
Yeah.
benefited as well, so that they can continue to do the thing that they're really good at, which is making art, whatever that looks like for them,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, I mean, it's not for everyone, right? The nice thing and the wonderful thing about art is that it's so, broad, and it can mean different things to different people.
Right.
So maybe as an artist, some people have a vision of, I just want to create. I don't really care about the growth or, the business aspect of it. Some people are very, very focused on how can I grow financially through this. Others, their goal is just to be an exhibiting artist as
Hmm.
well.
Hmm.
So I think it's important to know who you are and what you want to pursue
Right.
as well, because if you have that vision and once you want to achieve that vision and that goal, you'll know who to partner with to get there. You'll know who to talk to.
Yeah,
And no path is easy, but at least if you know a little bit of what you're looking for, you can find people that can help you
that can help.
get there.
Right.
Yeah.
I something that as you were just talking there about the different um the different ways people might want to set up their life as an artist, the word purpose came to my mind, right?
Mhm.
Because then you started thinking, or you started talking about vision and mission, um, a little bit in what you were just saying, but the word purpose came to my mind
Mhm.
um, as well. And I think something that I often talk to people about, before you even get to mission, you have to understand your purpose, right? The why am I doing this, right?
Mhm.
And until you understand your purpose, you're not going to be able to articulate your mission or promote your vision
Mhm.
super effectively. And you named several different broad categories of purposes, right? Why am I making art? Why am I making the artwork that I am making? What is my purpose for doing this? It could be just for me, or it
Mhm.
could be different. It could be, I want to make my living off of this, or I want to make a bigger impact. And I think for our conversation, and it's not to at all, because I think people who are just making art for themselves, really, and if anyone else benefits from it, that's extra. I think they can benefit from our conversation too. But
Mhm.
for people who want to take their art and get it out into the world more broadly, the idea of building a brand or a platform on which you can stand, I think is really, really important. And in order to do that, you have to understand purpose and then mission and vision. I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about artists and the importance of building brands.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, ditto on everything that you just said, because
Yeah.
purpose is so important. And not only as an artist, every single human being needs some sort of purpose. I think for so long, art, or the term art, the art industry, if you wanted to be an artist, you were seen a little bit of an outcast in terms of professional career as well, in a
Right.
lot of conversations. Oh, you're an artist, okay, good for you, good luck. As opposed to if you're like a lawyer or an engineer or a software
Yeah.
developer, which people feel a little bit more quote unquote secure in terms of our career path. But I see art and artists as very tangible career opportunities. I think the biggest part of it is through that narrative, the art world and artists themselves and us, people that work in that industry, believed what everyone else in the professional world was saying. And we didn't start
Mhm.
practicing art as a profession, as opposed to like a hobby or a
Right.
passion, which is fine. But as an artist, you need to take the same steps as someone that is building their own business. You are an entrepreneur, and you need to know, we talked about purpose and mission and vision. All of those things come along when you're building a company, right? And
Yeah.
companies are kind of like entities, and they're alive and they evolve, and the mission and the vision and all of these values can evolve with them. But it's important that you have them from the beginning, so that you know where you're going, and your purpose is very important because it's what aligns you with everyone else and gives people the opportunity to understand where you're going to and why you're doing things too. So the first thing that I've tried to do, and with forward partners, is kind of like erase that mentality of, we're artists, we're outcasts, we do things differently as well. And I do think both worlds can merge. And a lot of what we do at 4AP is trying to apply principles of brand building, of the luxury world, as well to art, so that in the future, artists can build out of their brands as well. I also think a really important aspect, which is very well connected, is the fact of building a community around your brand and yourself could really help you accelerate your growth too.
Sure.
And I think right now, the idea of community is so democratized. You can build community in so many different platforms, and you don't need to stand in like the middle of the square and yell and attract people to do that anymore.
Right.
You can do it through a blog, you can do it through posting, you can do it through newsletters. So there's so many opportunities to build that community. But I think those two elements, starting with, who am I, what's my vision, what's my mission, training yourself on those business aspects and concepts, and then starting to build your community. If you have those two things and you build them well, it's so powerful for artists that want to grow in this, path.
Yeah, I think a lot about something that was taught to me when I was learning how to build community and to get myself out there, is the know, like, and trust factor, where people first need to get to know you, right, and know who you are, what you're about. They need to then like what you're doing, right? So they need to have some buy-in to what you're doing, and then they need to trust that what you're doing and what you're putting out into the world is something that they want to invest in before they make an investment in your artwork. So it's not necessarily just as easy as painting a picture or making a sculpture, or composing a piece of music for someone. It has to be much more incorporated into everything else you do and are about, right? I think I was telling you when we were initially having a conversation with one another about how I collect artwork, right? So I am someone who is trying to build a collection, not just random pieces of work, but I want to have a collection. And in order to do that, I need to really know about the artist that I am engaging with and considering bringing into my space, right? And so I do a lot of research on them. I like to understand who they are. I like to meet them if possible, right? So that I can then more so like what they're doing, and then trust that my investment is going to be good. And if I can't get a sense of who they are, that's going to be really difficult for me to bring in a piece of artwork, even if I think that it is a nice looking piece of work.
Absolutely. And you remind me of a very important aspect of all of this, which is I speak with so many artists, and artists from established ones to young artists that are just up and coming, people that are just starting. And I always ask, like, who's your audience? Who do you want or envision having your work of art hanging? Or if we develop a product or a collaboration with someone, who do you envision wearing your art, wearing your designs, your collaborations? And really, not a lot of people can answer that question. But if you think about the commercial world, and brands, and even doctors and lawyers. Everyone has a niche. Who's your audience, who's your customer, who's your client. And with artists, what happens, or from my experience, is that oftentimes the response I get is, my audience is people that collect art.
Right.
Or that's like going to a Dolce & Gabbana and saying, who's your audience? And them saying that people that buy purses.
Right.
So if you don't know what your story is, what your narrative is, as well, you don't know who to target or who to sell to, because it's not clear to you. So if it's not clear to you, how is it going to be clear to someone else? As well? And it is fine that you want everyone to collect your art, and maybe you can get there as well. But at least when you're starting, or when you want to grow in a more commercial setting, you do need to know who you're targeting and who you want your story to resonate with too. And that's basically what you're saying of like, does this speak to me? Well, who are you, TJ? And maybe an artist speaks to you versus another one doesn't. Well, so it's beautiful that with art, as opposed to other industries, we have the advantage of storytelling, and storytelling that comes from the heart and from experience, and it's not invented. It really comes from a human side of the art as well.
100%. That's so, and because we know how to tell stories as artists through our work, right, you would think that it is maybe a little easier for us to understand these other concepts that you're talking about, which is, who is our audience, who is the person we're telling the story to, right? Really thinking about that. But I think what I notice is a resistance or a hesitation by artists to embrace the idea that a niche is a good thing, right? Or at least not a harmful thing. And I'm not sure what that is about. Do you have any sense of why there might be some resistance from artists to say, okay, in order for me to get my work out there more, or make more sales, or get a broader, or not a broader, but a deeper audience, I need to really think through this? Why do you think they push back sometimes?
It's very interesting. I think one of the reasons could be that historically those decisions have not been made by artists. They have been made by dealers, the galleries that represent them, the people that buy them. So we've never put almost like the weight of that decision making on the artist ever. That from a few years back till now, which really you've seen a boom on artists retaking their narrative, being able to sell and commercialize their artwork in different avenues, not necessarily through a dealer or a gallerist or other more traditional avenues of selling art. So now, for the first time in a very long time, the artist finds themselves with this kind of like pivotal decision making point that they had never had to do before. So and it's difficult to answer that question, but if you've never thought about it, it's even more difficult now. And two, it's really hard to put artists in boxes, and say, this is who you are and this is what I want to sell to. But that's true not only for artists. A lot of people have fear of being put in a box or just focusing on one thing, because you're always thinking, what else am I going to leave out? Well, but I think a really important thing to do, and a good exercise that I always tell people who I feel like need to develop their story a little bit more, is sit down and write your story like if you were writing your memoir, right? And then once you're done through that process, read through it and highlight words that you see repeat themselves, or anecdotes that you think are very similar from year to year, or different occasions, friends, brands that you mention, or opportunities that you've gotten. And through those connections on your own story, you start seeing what your preferences are, your values, and maybe through that exercise you can find your niche, or your target audience.
Right. It really starts to emerge through that process. I'm just thinking about how empowering this actually is for an artist or a practitioner in
Mhm.
the arts to actually have now the ability to really for themselves articulate what
Oh
they're
yeah.
doing, right? Because
Mhm.
like what you were saying is so true. For so long, right, the avenue for selling your work has been through the white box spaces, right? The galleries, or a dealer, or some other more traditional mechanism, and they were the ones, or still are the ones who make some of the decisions. They're the ones that have the clients and know what kind of clients come into the space, and so who are they able to move out of that space
Mm,
and then turn a profit. And I think that it's obviously still a really viable way of going about selling
absolutely.
your artwork, for sure. I'm friends with so many different amazing gallerists and art advisors
Yeah.
myself, and they do such amazing work.
Mhm.
But now today, there is also, in addition to all of that, so many more possibilities for artists to get their work out there
Yeah.
and have control over how it is seen and who sees it. And so I think this process that is maybe so scary on the face of it, thinking about these things and considering these decisions, is actually a really empowering opportunity for
Yeah.
artists to know themselves better. And then I'm thinking, beyond just knowing yourself better and feeling empowered about having that control and license over your work, it also has the opportunity to enhance your work and the quality
Mm,
of it, because you're getting to know yourself even more, and you can deepen it um,
yeah.
and clarify it even more, so it becomes stronger too.
Absolutely. And galleries are amazing, and as you said, the work that they do, it's really hard work that they
Yeah.
do, and it's really not easy. So of course they're very important, and I think the difference now, it's more of a conversation. I know artists were represented by galleries, and I'll ask the galleries, who is this artist, and they'll tell me something completely different than what the artist actually thinks of themselves. But I think that's starting to disappear, and it's starting to be more of a dialogue between the artists, the curators, the gallerists,
Yeah.
on set tone. And as you said, so many more opportunities and avenues for artists to also promote themselves and not only rely on one avenue, as well, which is, if that's what you want to do, that's completely fine. But if you're someone that is looking for other things, those exist now. So 100% make use of them. And I always, when I start working with an artist or an artist legacy, the first thing we do is always a few interviews with different people in their lives. It could be family, it could be partners, it could be friends. And we start building kind of like a profile or picture of who this person is as an artist, as well. And the people that you view yourself is very
Right.
different how someone else views you and their relationship to you. So the other thing is, artists work by themselves, is could be very lonely sometimes, and it could be
Right.
scary to go out and seek people and ask for feedback, or just ask, how do you view my art, what do you think of me, and who do you think I should partner with, what do you think my values are. So I always encourage artists, like, go out and ask those questions,
Mm.
eh, as well, because maybe you'll get amazing feedback.
Right.
eh, that is
Right.
very.
Yeah, not just what do you think about this piece of work that I just made, but more like, when you think about me, what comes to mind? What words or adjectives come to mind that describe me in your mind, right? Or,
100%. Yeah.
like, what sense do you get of me when we're spending time together? Those kinds of things can really be helpful to understand what kind of energy you're putting out into the space, what kind of impact are you making on people's minds and hearts after you leave, and that can be really informative to your art practice and also your business.
100%. I think at the end of the day, people buy your art because they love it, and to them it looks beautiful and they connect with the aesthetic part of it.
Right.
But more than that, is because they connected with who you are and your story and your essence. And that is true for everything other than art too. Like you would never go to a lawyer that you don't feel comfortable, you don't know their story, their experience, even though their work could be amazing. You know, in text, you want to know who the person is behind you. Same as a doctor, same as, you know, an engineer, everyone else. So with brand building, that's specifically true. And there's a lot of examples in the commercial world about how people, you know, you could have black t-shirts being sold by 300 different brands, but you're not buying from 300 different brands, you're buying from one or two. And it's because not only you like the black t-shirt, but you connect with their values, their story, and who they are as a brand.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm wondering what might be some branding or networking tips or maybe some strategies that you can offer to anyone who is resonating with our conversation today, that might have a quick or a quicker return on the time and effort that they're going to put in to it, so that they can maybe get a taste of what it's like to do some of this work for themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the first thing is writing your story, as we said,
Yeah.
highlighting, you know, the key terms that you see, storylines, and then nailing that down to a couple of sentences. Think about it as your slogan. If you have to pick on a slogan for your life that says or tells people who you are, you know, in just a few words, then you've really nailed it down. And that can help you simplify it, but also not simplify in the way that, you know, there's no meaning or it's not deep, you know where that came from, but through that process of simplifying your story in just a few words, you'll see how much that will help you find your brand values, and not in terms of commercial brand, but as personal identity or brand identity as well. I think in terms of networking, you know, so many people ask me this question and some people think it's right or not, but I'll give it to everyone and they can take it with a grain of salt. I really think as artists and people working in the art world, we tend to think that the way to network is meeting people in the industry. But the reality of it is I always suggest that artists network with people that are not in the art industry, because if you think, for example, if you're an artist and your whole story is how you were obsessed with the moon and space engineering and, you know, astronauts, and your work is around that and your investigation and research is around that, why wouldn't you go network with people that are in that area, right? Because one, you can learn so many new things, you'll make new friends, but also that is your target audience. Those are the people that will connect with your art world people. They're going to help you in other ways and you can connect with them professionally, but they're not necessarily going to connect with your story so much. So I always tell artists, go and network with people outside of the art world, you know, or in addition to of other things that make you passionate, right? I know artists that their passion is nature and sustainability. I know others whose passions is architecture and design as well. And through that, you start learning connections and learning about brands that you can collaborate with, collectors that you otherwise wouldn't have met as well. So I think those two things, like the story and that networking tip. And how you do that, a simple Google research in your area about groups that meet around that topic. That's how you start.
Yeah. And something that I find to be really important in terms of networking and building relationships with people is to actually start by being more interested in them and
Mm-hmm.
their story. Don't go in there like, you know, hot and heavy with your sales pitch, right? But actually really want to get to know those people, show interest in what they're doing, start a dialogue with them, and then over time you'll get to talk about your story and your purpose and your vision. But I find in all the work that I do, all of my work in all of the areas that I work in is all about relationships
Oh, yeah.
and establishing long lasting effective relationships. And I find that the easiest way for me to do that is to show an interest in the person before I try to get them to show an interest in me,
100%.
right?
I think it's so much better to be, a big fish in a little pond rather than a little fish in a big pond.
Yeah.
So if you are the one artist in this circle of network, and you're the only one that does what you do, but you come to that networking event, launch, whatever it is, the gathering, from a perspective of I'm an artist and I'm researching this topic and I want to learn from you rather than, oh, you're my target audience, I want to sell. You're going to start building long-term relationships that are then going to become collectors and are then going to want to help you. And they're probably one of the only artists you are probably one of the only artists they know
Right.
about, as opposed to if you only go to art networking events, you're going to be one of 1,000
Yeah.
as well. So it's looking at ways to strategically highlight what you do and be different and stand out. So I'm not saying don't go and not
Sure.
network in the art world, but not only focus on that.
Right. Right. I was going to say both things are important, but as far as trying to get people to think a little bit differently and try different things, I think they're used to doing the art world networking a little bit more than what we're talking about, which is tapping into new circles
Mhm.
and thinking about what your work is about in a different way. Like, who is actually interested in this? Where can this fit? Right, is
Exactly.
more important. So really
100%.
quickly before we end, I want to ask one more question about, once they get this networking piece down, once they understand really, once they synthesize their story into a sentence or two, or or a few words, how can they then capitalize on that further with someone like you and your partners at For Art Partners? How do
Mhm.
you then work with people after they've gotten themselves a little bit down the road?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now for AP, we're really focusing either on artist legacies, people that, already have career record, that you can see their art, you talk to them, they have very clear,
Yeah.
who they are and what they did throughout their lives. And when it's emerging artists or artists that are still alive, of course, for us, the line of where we said, okay, we want to start working with you, is really knowing that they know who they are and that when you see the artwork, it connects to one another.
Right.
So it's kind of like you're past that exploration of, I don't know who I am, I'm finding myself, because for us, we come from a business standpoint, right? And we understand art and we combine both things. And we are kind of like the bridge between the commercial and business world and then the art world and the creative side. But it's very hard for us to start working with an artist that doesn't know so much about themselves, or
Yeah.
that one day is doing something and the next day is doing something else. Because from business and commercial standpoint, when you go out and build a strategy, but then 2 months later you see the artist completely changes, there's no consistency, right?
Right.
As well, which is if you're looking for brand collaborations, if you're looking for, I don't know, to build product lines and distribute them through partners, for those people, it's really important to have consistency and be able to tell your story as well. So I would say once, if you're still finding yourself and you're experimenting, that's completely fine.
Right.
And by the way, you should never stop experimenting either, but through a line that connects everything as well. So I would say once, you know, you start networking, understanding how people see you better, how you see yourself, you have your story, it's start building your brand identity a little bit better. So that could be through color, that could be through texture, through iconography, you know, it could be through storyline as well. But if you don't stand for something, or you don't have that purpose, just the title back together, it's very hard for people to say, okay, I'm going to stand behind you and going to partner and collaborate with you.
Right. For sure.
Also, yeah.
For sure. And I think this is where, you know, you and I have some synchronicity a little bit, because I work with people on that earlier stage, right? On that earlier place where they're trying to understand who they are, why they're doing what they're doing, what their purpose is. How do we then tell that story in a way that makes a lot of sense, not only just to us, but to other people around, so that you can start building that a body of work that has that through line, Raquel, that you're talking about, so that then someone like you and your colleagues can really come in and collaborate with that artist to put their legacy into place, and start, you know, developing that business further. But you're totally right. Before you can do anything with it, it needs to be really crystallized and synthesized to the point where it can be clearly expressed to someone who can, you know, take you further. So thank you so much for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. You have so much to offer. And can you just tell people where they can find out more about 4Art Partners and what you do, regardless of whether they're ready to kind of connect with you on a professional level? I think a lot of people would like to learn more about your model and your story.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, TJ. I'm sure we can continue to talk about this topic for hours and hours, because we're both very passionate about it. But I am so honored that you reached out and that we're having this conversation. I hope it's not the last one. If you want to learn more about 4AP, you can go to our website, 4artpartners.com. We're on LinkedIn also as 4artpartners.com, and Instagram 4Art Partners as well. I'm always happy to connect with people and explore avenues of collaboration. So even if someone doesn't feel like they're ready, you know, always a conversation or an email or chat doesn't hurt as well. And I'm usually very transparent. Do I think we can work together or not? And I appreciate that type of transparency towards me as well. So
important.
No judgment in reaching out, because that's how we get things done too. But thank you so much, really.
Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. And we'll put Raquel's links into the notes that come along with the episode. And I really hope that you take the opportunity to check out what she's doing. She offers such important stuff to the world and particular artists. So once again, everybody, this is the Bold Creatives Collective podcast. I'm TJ, and I will see you where I see you somewhere. Have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.